Welcome to this week's Cattle Call. I'm Susan Littlefield, and joining me on screen is Brad Kooima. He's with Kooima and Varlick out of Sioux Center, Iowa. And I tell you, I wish we would have done this on a Wednesday or even early on a Thursday when things were looking so good for the market. Crude oil, there's a lot of factors, a lot of fingers in the pot that come from the outside that affected what we've seen in this cattle trade today, and definitely saw it as numbers took a big drop to finish out the day. So I guess, Brad, that's where we got to start. Crude oil, can we just blame it all on that?
Well, you know, I suppose not, but I'm struggling for, no lie. Like I said, I'd rather done this at 9 o'clock, and I'll be the first to admit that there's times when the market makes very little sense to me on a daily basis, and today would be one of those. It felt like, though, first of all, we were quite oversold coming in here. We had a 2.5 week rally. And a lot of our commodities have had that. The hog market had the same kind of action today. So we were probably due for a down day. I wouldn't have not at all been surprised at a down day today, but to erase half of the rally that took 2.5 weeks to get and take it away in 2 hours is frustrating. I've got the old saying, I've got a Post-it note stuck in my other desk over there, up on the stairs, down on the elevator, right? So we always have had a natural tendency in the commodity markets to have those down moves quicker because you always have a group of sellers, those of us that produce it, who are potential sellers every day. So, am I in a state of panic over today's action? I am not. June cattle, the most actively traded contract. The low today is right at 50% of this last leg up, and it's right at the 40-day moving average. Let's hope that holds tomorrow. I would have liked to seen us get a little separation off those lows and close a little more mid-range than we did, but we didn't. I'm anxious also to see what the open interest does. If we saw a big drop in the open interest today, then Susan, then they would say, okay, well, some of the longs came out, some of the funds came out. Your crude oil comment, I think, is actually got some credibility to it, I think, because that was sharply lower. Just about every commodity that usually is on the what's an inflationary sensitive commodity on that list, just about every single one of those got trashed pretty good today. So I don't know if there was just kind of a risk off mentality in that mood of that money manager, perhaps. One of the things that you worry about as a broker today, and anybody I'm sure is going like, well, what's going on? What's the news? Is there something going on? Is there something that I don't know? That's, of course, what I really fear, because this is supposed to be my job, right? One of the things that the initial question when I talked around to my network of friends, if you want to call them that, was whether there was something new from OSHA. A few days ago, there was some talk from that group that they were potentially looking again at whether they were going to change some of the regulations on spacing at a packing house. Now, this news is like at least a week old, I think, Susan. And I initially was troubled, and I thought, you got to be kidding me. It's a year. By the way, a year ago today, June cattle were at 85.92. How about that? 85.92 is where they were a year ago. We were right in the throes of the COVID wreck. So anyway, to get to my point here, so I called, and I don't know. I don't think that was the deal. Nobody's telling me, and everybody that I talk to on that is like, oh, come on, get real. They've had days off where they vaccinated their whole staff or their whole workforce at these places. Right. They're doing fine. We're getting hogs and cattle dead in a very, very timely fashion. Certainly, but it's government, so anything is possible. So I don't think that there was a catalyst exactly for the event other than we were overbought, and yet a lot of the energy markets falling out of bed, and the cattle futures kind of sympathetically got it going with it too, and then the ball starts rolling.
Is there some excitement that could be building? I know that National Beef is doing an expansion in Iowa. We've heard other plants across the Midwest are looking to do some expansions as well to their plants. Does that, or could that bode well for the cattle market?
Oh, well, yeah, there's one potentially in Nebraska. I don't know. I just happened to see the prospectus on that a couple of days ago. But what we're talking about is leverage, Susan, and you bring up a great point. I've seen some studies that would tell you that there is, and I say this, I don't mean to sound this flippant at all, but there is a very, very fine line between too much and not enough. And when the packer has the ability to have a few more cattle offered to him than they have for shackle space, that little bit is a bunch. I mean, in terms of what we're getting paid for our cattle. I've seen studies that would suggest that if we would change our ability to slaughter cattle by as little as 3,500 a day, given the supply we have right now, that would be enough to tip the scales way in the advantage of the seller rather than the advantage of the buyer. Now, saying that's easy, developing the hundreds of millions of dollars it takes to, build a 35, like a Greater Omaha style plant, for instance. I mean, that if you could poof, drop one out of the sky, our market would be different tomorrow. But yes, I am very encouraged by what I hear at Kooima. I'm hearing, there's a small plant north of us that's, slowly getting going. They're going to try to do 150, 200 a day. There's another one I know in central Iowa that's trying to get that hit. Certainly every little bit helps. We've been trying to press on our congressional people to come up with creative ways, whether it's tax incentives or something like that, to try to encourage. And they have these sort of things, and they have a pretty soft ear right now to these sort of things. So yeah, I'm encouraged by it. It's not going to help us tomorrow, but I mean that's the way things work, right? Let's work today for better things down the road.
Can we be optimistic though with the way we saw cash trade this week that maybe that momentum could continue next week?
Really ironic, the worst trading futures day we've had is on a day where the cash news is the best it's been in 7 weeks, right? I mean it's 7 weeks of steady, and I got 115 today. There's a little bit of 115.50 now. That's $2 better than I could have got last week. Yes, I think all the things that you and I have talked about so many times, that the North's supply is actually less than I think what the general public thinks it is. I think that the cost of gain has got our average weights, which by the way, today on the Thursday, hallelujah, our average weights, steer and heifer carcass weights are the same as a year ago. That hasn't happened since a year ago, for goodness sakes, when we backed all these cattle up starting in March of a year ago. So, and why wouldn't you? I mean, anybody that's a feeder out there knows that when you're on a finish or two ration, the last ration you feed a big steer, their cost of gain is probably closer to $1.30 today, and you're only getting $1.14 or $1.15. It get them dead, So that is why typically high price feed makes for a better market. So, combination of, we still have inflation out there. They still borrowed all that money. That's it. You're going to have even better demand as we get everybody vaccinated and the restaurants open again and the weather gets warmer, right? And the demand is already fantastic. Then you couple that with less weight, less supply. I really think that the long view of the cattle has got me very enthusiastic.
All right. Well, that's this week's Cattle Call. Thanks so much, Brad, for joining us.
You're welcome.
All right. Cattle Call. Just a reminder, commodity futures and options do involve substantial risk and might not be suitable for all investors. Again, that is Cattle Call for this week. I'm Susan Littlefield.